So there is the second and the shorter question, which asks for more elaboration. And my main question is, your concept is kind of very. I can see some overlappings with. I don't know if you've heard about Lee Edelman, who has recently published. Recently, 2004, a very influential book in queer theory, especially in the antisocial turn in queer theory, which is titled as No Future, Death, Drive, and Queer Theory. So I will try to be very brief and to make my point here. So he's working pretty much with Lacanian terms, not pretty much but exclusively with Lacanian terms, especially with the concepts of the real, death, drive, and the symptom. Not the symptom, but the symptom. In what kind of the way is usually appropriated in his thinking on ideology. But Edelman's position, for example, is that queers should take the burden of their figural position, which is not like essentializing or substantializing position, but is exclusively a figural position, which has been determined in the social and political structures queers are actually living in. So his claim is that they should leave this position and force it as a political position in order to disrupt the symbolic pretensions of its universalization and its strivings for meaning, for substantializing and fixing meaning, which is impossible position of the symbolic because it is always disrupted by the real and the energy sounds, which is actually indicated in the symptom. So his position is that queers actually, in a way, figuratively embody this symptom in the symbolic, which is the political. The political, actually, in his concept, is thought through the symbolic as a symbolic organization of meaning and of society, of our roles, how we symbolically embody our imaginary identities and positions. So he's not claiming or arguing for a new universalistic position that queers should take on, but actually that they should take this position, which is the position of death drive, and take that burden. And he's doing this exclusively on their figurative position in the dominant symbolic and political order, so not essentializing. So in this context, my question would be, can we consider the Balkans as that particular, or as this interruption of the real, figurative embodiment or positioning of the real within the dominant universalistic order of Euro-Centrism, or the order that proclaims itself to be the universal one, the normative one, the everlasting one, etc., etc. Or we are just talking about the Balkans as, I don't know, in general, like something that can start rethinking the universal notions and how they have been so far actually structured ideologically or epistemologically. So, do you see this figurative position in the Balkans? And maybe make a claim that Balkans should take this burden of making political claims that try to reconfigure the dominant epistemological and ideological notions, or you do not see the Balkans in any kind of as I don't know, a subject, collective subject, or I don't know what kind of position that should take this political struggle or however. I don't know if I made myself clear, please.
Okay, first question. Well, what I'm saying in that book is actually that yes, I do claim that suffering or experience as the event, the happening, taking place of the real, has its material basis and its last anchor is the body. but I still think beyond the dichotomy of body and mind. And in the last instance, I'm placing the taking place of suffering in the real, and I'm claiming that the universals, which can be, again, coming to the first question, which can be beyond discourses of cultural or any other sort of political hegemony, are the ones which are transcendentally minimal, which are based on that almost border with the prelingual, hence the proximity with the body. Still, it's not prelingual. The political is never prelingual because it's the linguistic par excellence. It's language. The language is necessary for the taking place of the political. But correlating with the real, one of these things would be the experience of suffering and co-suffering at the instance of the real. So this type of solidarity, which is based on the experiential, purely experiential, which takes place as an experience, as a feeling of suffering and co-suffering with the other suffering. You do not need explication for that. This type of universals, which are the transcendental and minimalistic, and which are in close contact with the experiential, are the universals which are, I think, most which offer best guarantees not to become totalitarian or hegemonistic in any sort. So this kind of readdresses once again the first question and the second about the body. So coming back to the question about the body, when this claim of mine is contested by some friends in cognitive terms or in terms of analytic philosophy, what is identifying with or with the suffering of the other, it's already a mental process, etc., etc. My claim is that it is not, that it mostly takes place in the material, in the body, and this is what gives me assurance that it is still on the safe side of being sufficiently prelingual or transcendentally minimal, because I believe that it takes place through the body, in the body, as bodily process, and I may be archaic in defending this argument in Spinozian terms, but it's mostly defended in the book you mentioned in Spinozian terms. Although, going back to the works of very contemporary authors who write in terms of, natural sciences, such as Sterling, I believe that it can be defended in her terms as well. I do believe that the process of solidarization with the suffering of the other does take place through the material. Through the body. So I'm resorting to the body as kind of something which safeguards this tendency to be transcendentally minimal and to place this claim for solidarity in something which is finally material, in the last instance, material, the body. So this is why and in which sense the body matters to me, but I am still trying to develop the argument in the book beyond the dichotomy between the body and the mind. About the Balkans as being the real, that would be basically the thing. The real, which would kind of be, your contention was, and analogy was that actually it should retain constantly the position of being the real, which challenges the symbolic. Right? This would be taking the burden.
Yes, but in the queer context, I was just elaborating Elma's argument, but it's not like the claim I'm taking. I was just trying to see if there are some analogies that can be made.
I mean, that claim was... I don't know, I'm not in favor of taking the burden of being the challenger of the symbolic or the normative. Rather, I would claim the right to participate in the organization and the formation of the symbolic and the normative. I believe that actually the analogy goes rather to this other situation where we are constantly being othered, and we have been trying for decades to make something productive out of it, and from our otherness we were challenging the normativeness of the West, etc., etc. I believe that being the other, or being the bearer of the burden of being the real, etc., and challenging the normative is a position of subject, the subjugated. It's a kind of undergoing a form of violence, and I would argue actually against it, and I would argue for the right to participation in the formation of the normative and the symbolic.
In the end, there's, at least that's the impression I get of that entire, finally, or in the last instance, again, masculinistic, heroic, or martyrs logic of taking the burden of, although not interpreting it as a victimized position, but yet taking the burden is and combating the dominant order is I can still see some remnants or residue of the entire masculinistic and heroic logic, which is European and more or less even Judeo-Christian.
Although you may be, there might be here some resonances of when you mentioned the martyrdom. Well, then I realized that there are similarities with his claim and what I'm claiming here because of the heretic subject, which is always already in the state of rebellion against normativity, etc., etc. But that goes for everybody, every subject. There is no cultural group or political group or social group which is entitled or doomed to this fate of being, the Christological political emancipator. Everybody is. This is what L'Oreal says, so, and I subscribe to.
Yes, I have a question with respect to what you have said right now. I'm not sure is it good to take the body as a point of departure, the body that is not part of the symbolic order,